The security guard looked at me, then at the lunch bag in my hand, and started laughing. Not a polite chuckle. Not the uncomfortable laugh of someone who had misunderstood a joke. It was a genuine, bewildered laugh that echoed across the marble lobby. "Sir," he said, "I see the CEO's husband almost every day." He pointed toward the elevators. "There he is now." I turned and watched a tall man in an expensive charcoal suit walk toward us. I recognized him immediately. Frank Sterling. My wife's vice president. The man she had supposedly spent countless late nights working beside. The man the security guard believed was married to her. Frank's eyes met mine. For one brief second, recognition flashed across his face. He knew exactly who I was. Every instinct inside me demanded that I confront him. Instead, I smiled and extended my hand. "You must be Frank," I said. "Lauren has told me a great deal about you." That was the moment I decided to play along. And it may have been the smartest decision I made during my 28-year marriage. My name is Gerald Hutchins. I was 56 years old when a simple surprise visit to my wife's office shattered everything I believed about my life. Until that Thursday afternoon in October, I thought I knew Lauren better than anyone in the world. We had been married for 28 years. We shared a home, bank accounts, family traditions, private jokes, and thousands of ordinary memories that I believed formed an unbreakable bond. I knew how she took her coffee. I knew which side of the bed she preferred. I knew she rubbed the inside of her wrist whenever she was nervous and reorganized the kitchen cabinets whenever she was angry. I believed I could recognize every expression that crossed her face. I was wrong. The idea of visiting her office had been innocent. Lauren had been working 12 and 14-hour days as Chief Executive Officer of Meridian Technologies in downtown Austin. For weeks, she had come home late, carrying stories about board meetings, client emergencies, and international conference calls. I had spent too many evenings cooking dinner for two and eating alone. That Thursday morning, she rushed out without drinking her usual coffee. She kissed my cheek while checking her phone and said she had an emergency meeting at 8. I watched her hurry down the driveway in a tailored navy suit, climb into her silver BMW, and disappear around the corner. Instead of feeling neglected, I felt concerned. That was the kind of husband I had always been. Understanding. Patient. Proud of her success. Around lunchtime, I stopped at her favorite coffee shop and ordered a large vanilla latte with an extra shot of espresso. Then I prepared a turkey sandwich using the cranberry spread she liked and placed it inside a brown paper bag. I imagined her surprise when I appeared at the office. Maybe she would take 15 minutes away from the boardroom. Maybe we would sit together in her office and laugh about how rarely I visited. Maybe she would remember that someone at home still missed her. The Meridian building rose above downtown in steel and glass, reflecting the bright Texas sky. I parked in a visitor space and walked through the revolving doors carrying her coffee and lunch. I had visited the building only a few times. Lauren preferred to keep her professional and personal lives separate. She said mixing the two created unnecessary complications. I respected that boundary. Looking back, I respected far too many boundaries. The lobby was designed to make visitors feel small. White marble floors. Chrome fixtures. Tall windows. A reception desk that looked like it belonged inside a luxury hotel. A security guard sat behind it, studying two computer monitors. His nameplate read William Carter. "Good afternoon," I said. "I'm here to see Lauren Hutchins." William looked up. "Do you have an appointment?" "No. I'm her husband, Gerald. I wanted to surprise her with lunch." I lifted the coffee and paper bag. His expression changed. At first, I thought he had not heard me. He tilted his head and studied my face. "You said you're Mrs. Hutchins's husband?" "Yes." "Gerald Hutchins?" "That's right." William glanced toward the elevators. Then he looked back at me. His confusion deepened. "Sir, I'm sorry, but I see Mrs. Hutchins's husband almost every day. He left about 10 minutes ago." I stared at him. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The sounds of the lobby seemed to recede. Phones ringing. Shoes crossing marble. Elevator doors opening. All of it became distant. "I think you're mistaken," I said. William's face reddened. "I don't believe so." He raised one hand and pointed. "There he is coming back now." Frank Sterling stepped through the revolving doors. He appeared to be in his mid-40s. Tall. Athletic. Dark hair styled perfectly. His charcoal suit fit as though it had been made specifically for him. He carried himself with the casual confidence of a man accustomed to entering rooms where people already knew his name. Frank nodded at the guard. "Afternoon, Bill. Lauren asked me to grab some files from the car." "No problem, Mr. Sterling. She's upstairs." "Mr. Sterling." The familiarity in William's voice made my stomach turn. My fingers tightened around the paper bag. The coffee cup felt suddenly weightless. William looked between us. "I'm sorry, sir. Are you certain you're Mrs. Hutchins's husband? Because Mr. Sterling is married to her." Married to her. Not dating her. Not rumored to be involved with her. Married. A simple statement delivered by a man who believed he was correcting an administrative misunderstanding. Frank stopped walking. His eyes found mine. Recognition flickered across his face. It disappeared almost immediately, but not quickly enough. He knew me. He had probably seen photographs. He may have heard stories. Perhaps Lauren had described the trusting husband at home who never asked too many questions. "Is there a problem?" Frank asked. His voice was calm and controlled. It was the voice of a man accustomed to managing uncomfortable situations. My heart was hammering so hard that I could feel it in my throat. I wanted to grab him by the jacket. I wanted to demand that William call Lauren downstairs. I wanted the entire building to hear what had happened. But 25 years of working as an accountant had taught me something valuable. When the numbers do not make sense, do not announce that you have discovered the problem. Remain quiet. Collect the records. Find out how deep the dishonesty goes. So I smiled. "You must be Frank," I said, extending my hand. "Lauren has mentioned you." His hesitation lasted only a fraction of a second. Then he shook my hand. "And you are?" "Gerald. A friend of the family." The light tasted bitter. "I was dropping off a few things for Lauren." Frank's shoulders relaxed slightly. His eyes remained alert. "Yes, of course. She has mentioned you as well." Had she? What could she possibly have told him? That I was a family friend? A relative? A harmless man from her past? "She's in meetings most of the afternoon," Frank continued. "I can make sure she receives whatever you brought." I handed him the latte and sandwich. My movements felt mechanical. "Tell her Gerald stopped by." "Of course." His smile was flawless. Professional. Friendly. Normal. As though we had not just stood in a lobby while a security guard identified him as my wife's husband. I turned and walked toward the doors. I forced myself not to look back. The October air struck my face as I stepped outside. Cars moved along the street. People crossed the sidewalk carrying briefcases and cups of coffee. Everything looked exactly as it had when I arrived. But my world had shifted beneath me. I sat inside my car and stared through the windshield at the Meridian building. 28 years. 28 years of birthdays, anniversaries, vacations, arguments, forgiveness, illness, and ordinary mornings. 28 years of sharing a home. How could another man walk through our office and be recognized as her husband? How often had he done it? How many employees believed it? And what had Lauren told them about me? My phone vibrated. A message from Lauren appeared. "Running late again tonight. Don't wait up. Love you." I read it 3 times. Love you. 2 words that had comforted me for decades now felt like part of a script. I started the car and drove home. The familiar streets appeared strangely foreign. Our house stood at the end of a quiet block beneath 2 large oak trees. A red brick colonial we purchased when Lauren received her first major promotion. She chose the neighborhood. She designed the garden. Both our names were printed neatly on the mailbox. Gerald and Lauren Hutchins. I sat in the driveway staring at those names. Was I still her husband everywhere except our office? Inside, the silence felt different. It was no longer the comfortable quiet of a house waiting for its occupants. It felt hollow. Staged. Like a model home filled with carefully selected objects designed to suggest a happy life. I walked through the rooms. Wedding photographs. Vacation souvenirs. The ceramic bowl Lauren made during a pottery class 5 years earlier. A framed photograph from our 25th anniversary. Had any of it been real? I made tea and sat at the kitchen table. My mind replayed the scene in the lobby. William's certainty. Frank's recognition. The immediate ease with which Frank and I lied to each other. I searched for an innocent explanation. Perhaps employees jokingly called Frank her work husband. Perhaps William misunderstood. Perhaps Lauren and Frank attended so many events together that assumptions had formed. But none of those possibilities explained Frank's face when he saw me. He had not been confused. He had been calculating. The front door opened at 9:30. Lauren's heels clicked across the hardwood floor. Her keys landed on the hall table. Sounds I had heard thousands of times. "Gerald, I'm home." She appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing the same navy suit from that morning. Her blonde hair remained perfectly arranged. She looked tired, successful, and familiar. The woman I had loved for nearly 3 decades. "How was your day?" I asked. "Exhausting." She loosened her jacket. "Back-to-back meetings all afternoon. I barely had time to breathe." "Did you eat?" "Not really." I studied her face. There was no visible anxiety. No sign that Frank had told her I visited. "I brought you coffee today," I said. Her hand paused as she reached for a wineglass. The pause lasted less than a second. Then she smiled. "You did? To your office." "I didn't receive any coffee. I gave it to Frank." Another pause. This one was even shorter. "Oh. Frank mentioned that someone stopped by." "Someone?" "I was in meetings. He probably didn't want to interrupt." She opened the refrigerator and poured wine with her back toward me. "That was sweet of you." Her hands were perfectly steady. Either nothing was wrong, or my wife was an extraordinary liar. The rest of the evening passed as a performance of normal life. We watched the news. We discussed weekend plans. She complained about a board member. I nodded at the appropriate moments. When we went upstairs, she followed the same routine she had followed for years. She washed her face, applied moisturizer, set her phone on the nightstand, and kissed me good night. Minutes later, she was asleep. I remained awake beside her. The woman sleeping inches from me looked completely familiar. Yet I no longer knew who she was. How many times had she spent the day being Frank's wife and returned home to become mine? 3 years had passed since Frank joined Meridian. 3 years of late meetings. Business dinners. Weekend conferences. Unexpected trips. How much of it had been real? The most frightening question was not whether Lauren was having an affair. It was whether the life beside me was the affair and the life at her office was the marriage she truly valued. The following morning arrived with cruel normality. Lauren drank half a cup of coffee, checked her phone, and kissed my cheek before leaving. She wore the perfume I had given her for Christmas. "Love you," she said. "Love you, too." The answer left my mouth automatically. After her car disappeared, I called my assistant and said I would work from home. For the first time in 15 years, I could not imagine discussing tax returns or quarterly reports. I sat at the kitchen table staring at Lauren's coffee mug in the sink. By noon, I began searching. I did not dare through drawers in a panic. I approached the problem as I would approach a questionable financial statement. Methodically. I started in her home office. The desk contained company letterhead, legal pads, business cards, and reports. Everything appeared normal. Then I found a receipt inside a folder marked travel reimbursements. It was from Chez Laurent, a French restaurant downtown where Lauren and I had celebrated several anniversaries. The receipt was dated 6 weeks earlier. Dinner for 2. 2 entrees. 1 bottle of wine. No client code. No reimbursement notation. Lauren had told me she was meeting a female executive from Portland that evening. I remembered the night clearly. We spoke on the phone at 9:30. She sounded relaxed and cheerful. She said the meeting had gone well and that Meridian might land a major contract. Now I held evidence that at least part of that story was false. My phone rang. Lauren's name appeared. "Hi, honey," I answered. My voice sounded surprisingly normal. "I wanted to check on you," she said. "You seemed quiet this morning." "Just tired." "You should take a break. You've been working too hard." The irony almost made me laugh. Instead, I tested her. "I was thinking about the Portland client." "What about her?" "The woman you took to Shaileron 6 weeks ago. Did Meridian get the contract?" There was a pause. Most people would not have noticed it. After 28 years, I knew every rhythm of Lauren's speech. She was calculating. "No," she said. "She decided to use a local firm." "That's unfortunate. You win some and lose some." I heard typing in the background. "Why do you ask?" "No reason. You seemed excited about it." I was. "Listen, I need to prepare for a board meeting. I'll see you tonight." After she hung up, I placed the receipt on the table. The client may have existed. The dinner may have happened. But Lauren had lied so smoothly that I no longer knew which part was false. I reviewed our credit card statements. For years, I had scanned them casually. Lauren earned more than I did and generally managed our larger household expenses. I trusted her. Now I examined every transaction. Lunch charges on days she claimed she was eating at her desk. Gas purchases in neighborhoods far from Meridian. Boutique charges for clothing I had never seen. Restaurant bills corresponding with evenings she said she was attending corporate events. None of it proved an affair. Together, it revealed a pattern. A second routine existed inside our finances. A life operating parallel to mine. Her laptop sat open on the kitchen counter. A notification appeared in the corner. Frank Sterling sent a calendar invitation. I knew opening it would violate her privacy. 24 hours earlier, the idea would have disgusted me. 24 hours earlier, I believed my wife was faithful. I clicked. The invitation was for dinner that evening at Belle Corte. 7 o'clock. Reservation under Frank Sterling. Belle Corte was not a casual restaurant. It was where Lauren and I celebrated our 20th anniversary. The place she described as ours. I opened her calendar. Lunches with Frank marked only with his initial. Coffee every Tuesday at 8. Dinner every other Thursday. A weekend spa trip Lauren had described to me as a conference for female executives. A Saturday planning session scheduled for the coming weekend, when she had already warned me she would be working. This was not a spontaneous affair. It was organized. Recurring. Integrated into her life. Frank was not an occasional secret. He was a standing appointment. The garage door opened at 6:15. I closed the calendar. Lauren entered the kitchen looking beautiful. She had refreshed her makeup. Her hair was newly styled. She wore the black dress I bought for her birthday. A dress she claimed was too formal for ordinary evenings. "You're home early," I said. "I managed to escape." She smiled and opened the refrigerator. "I thought we could go out tonight. It's been too long since we did something spontaneous." Had I not seen her calendar, I would have felt grateful. I would have rushed upstairs to change. I would have believed my hard-working wife had chosen me over another evening at the office. "Where did you want to go?" "Maybe sushi. Or somewhere new." She checked her phone while speaking. Her fingers moved rapidly. Was she canceling dinner with Frank? Rescheduling it? Warning him that I had become suspicious? Then her expression changed. "Oh, no." "What?" "I forgot about a conference call with Tokyo." She shook her head and looked disappointed. "It starts at 7:30 and may run until 10. "Tonight?" "I'm sorry. It completely slipped my mind." Her voice was perfect. "Tired." "Regretful." "Responsible." "I'll probably grab something on the way back to the office." I nodded. "Of course." She paused at the stairs. "You're so understanding, Gerald. I don't know what I'd do without you." The words felt like needles beneath my skin. 20 minutes later, she came downstairs in a navy blouse and dark slacks. Professional enough to support the conference call story. Attractive enough for an intimate dinner. She kissed my cheek. "I'll try not to be late." "Take your time." After she left, the house felt haunted. Every photograph seemed to mock me. I made a sandwich and sat in front of the television without seeing it. At 8:30, I drove downtown. I told myself I needed groceries. Bellecourte was nowhere near the grocery store. Lauren's BMW was parked outside the restaurant. Beside it stood a black Mercedes I had seen Frank driving away from Meridian. I did not enter. I did not need to. The final thread of hope broke inside me. They were eating dinner while I was supposed to believe Lauren was speaking with Tokyo. Perhaps he was holding her hand. Perhaps they were discussing a future that did not include me. Perhaps she was laughing in the way she once laughed with me. I drove home in a daze. By then, the affair was no longer a suspicion. The only unanswered questions were how long it had existed and how completely Lauren intended to erase me. 3 days later, I discovered the key. I was cleaning the kitchen junk drawer, something I did every few months. Beneath old batteries and takeout menus, I found a brass key attached to a plastic tag. Harborview Apartments. Building C. Apartment 214. We owned our home. Neither of us had any reason to possess an apartment key. That afternoon, while Lauren attended what she described as a client presentation, I drove across Austin. Harborview was an upscale complex near the river. Private balconies. Covered parking. Landscaped courtyards. The kind of place successful professionals rented when they wanted privacy without attracting attention. I sat in the visitor lot holding the key. Part of me wanted to leave. As long as I did not open the door, some small space remained for uncertainty. Then Frank's Mercedes entered the property. He parked in a numbered space near Building C. He removed groceries and dry cleaning from the trunk. He walked toward the building with the relaxed familiarity of a man returning home. I waited 10 minutes. Then I followed. The key turned smoothly in the lock of apartment 214. The door opened. What I found was not a temporary meeting place. It was a home. A furnished, organized, fully inhabited home. Lauren's favorite throw pillows rested on the couch. Books about international business filled the shelves. 2 coffee cups sat beside the sink. A framed photograph stood on the mantel. Lauren and Frank at a company Christmas party. His arm circled her waist. Her body leaned naturally against his. They did not look like co-workers hiding a careless affair. They looked married. Another photograph showed them on a beach. Lauren wore a white sundress I had never seen. Her skin was tanned. Frank kissed her cheek while she laughed. Her left hand was visible. No wedding ring. I moved through the apartment carefully. In the bedroom, Lauren's clothes hung beside Frank's. Her shoes occupied half the closet. Her perfume stood on the dresser next to his cologne. The bathroom contained 2 toothbrushes. Her contact lens solution. Her face cream. Medication bearing her name. This was not somewhere she visited occasionally. She lived here. Perhaps not every night. But enough to build a second household. On the kitchen counter, I discovered a blue folder. Lauren's handwriting appeared across the front. Future plans. Inside were listings for houses in wealthy neighborhoods. Vacation brochures for Italy, Greece, and the Caribbean. A draft business plan proposing a reorganization of Meridian Technologies. Frank Sterling was listed as Chief Executive Officer. Lauren Hutchins was listed as President. They were not merely planning a personal future. They were planning a corporate empire. At the bottom of the folder was a consultation summary from Morrison & Associates Family Law. I knew the firm. They had updated our wills 5 years earlier. According to the summary, Lauren had met with one of their attorneys twice during the previous 4 months. The subject was described as divorce strategy for a high-asset client. The document outlined her plan in clinical detail. She intended to file for divorce and cite irreconcilable differences, emotional abandonment, and lifestyle incompatibility. My preference for quiet evenings would be presented as social isolation. My satisfaction with my accounting practice would become a lack of ambition. My modest spending habits would be described as an unwillingness to support her professional growth. My willingness to give her space during stressful periods would be reframed as emotional neglect. Every quality she had once praised was being converted into evidence against me. The most disturbing section concerned timing. Lauren had been documenting my supposed failures for nearly 2 years. She kept notes about evenings when I read instead of suggesting that we go out. She recorded occasions when I declined expensive vacations because of work obligations. She described my quiet personality as withdrawal. She had been creating a new history of our marriage. A history in which she was an ambitious woman trapped by an indifferent husband. A history that would justify Frank. A history that would make our friends believe she had no choice but to leave. I sat on the couch surrounded by photographs of their shared life. The scale of the betrayal became clear. This was not an affair that accidentally became serious. It was a calculated replacement. Frank had not simply taken my place beside my wife. Lauren had been systematically writing me out of her future. My phone vibrated. A text from Lauren appeared. "Running late tonight. Don't wait up. Love you." The same message she had sent before. Perhaps she had written those words from this apartment. Perhaps she had been sitting on this couch beside Frank while telling me she loved me. I photographed everything. The apartment. The framed photographs. The shared closet. The folder. The legal strategy. The business plan. I sent copies to a secure account and documented the date and time. The accountant inside me had taken control. For 3 days, uncertainty had tortured me. Now I possessed facts. Facts were painful, but they were useful. When I returned home, Lauren's laptop was open on the kitchen counter. This time, I did not hesitate. Her email contained everything I needed. Messages between Lauren and Frank discussing the transition. Correspondence with her attorney about preparing Gerald for inevitable changes. Notes about waiting until the financial quarter ended before filing for divorce. Emails to mutual friends quietly reshaping their perception of our marriage. One message to her sister Sarah had been sent 2 weeks earlier. "Gerald has been distant lately. I think he may be going through some kind of midlife crisis, but he refuses to communicate. I'm trying to be patient, but I cannot sacrifice my happiness indefinitely. Frank believes I need to consider my options." I read it twice. Lauren was not merely hiding an affair. She was preparing witnesses. She was planning explanations in advance. By the time she filed for divorce, our friends would already believe I had driven her away. Every act of support had been turned against me. When she worked late, I understood. When she traveled, I encouraged her. When she appeared stressed, I gave her space. When she suggested counseling, I agreed. I believed I was protecting our marriage. In reality, I was helping her construct the evidence she intended to use to destroy it. That night, Lauren returned home shortly before 11. She apologized for another client dinner. She kissed my cheek. She asked about my day. The familiar routine continued as though nothing had changed. "How was dinner?" I asked. "Productive. We may land a major contract." "Was Frank there?" Her eyes flickered. "Of course. He will manage the account if we get it. You two work well together." Lauren paused with her cup halfway to her mouth. "We do. He understands the business in a way most people don't." Warmth entered her voice. A warmth she once reserved for me. "He's been responsible for some of our biggest successes." I nodded. Inside, I calculated. How soon would she file? How much money had she moved? How much of our shared life did she intend to take with her? As Lauren slept beside me that night, I understood that my marriage was already over. The only remaining question was whether I would allow her to control the ending. For 2 years, she had prepared. She had gathered documents. Created a story. Built a second home. Positioned another man to replace me. And assumed that when the truth finally arrived, I would remain passive, heartbroken, and easy to manage. She had made one serious mistake. She believed my kindness meant I was weak. She believed contentment meant I lacked ambition. And she believed the quiet accountant sleeping beside her would never understand how to follow a trail of hidden money, false narratives, and carefully organized lies. By Saturday morning, I had gathered everything into one folder. The restaurant receipt. The calendar entries. The photographs from Harbor View. The divorce strategy. The emails. The evidence of their second life. I placed the folder on the kitchen table. Then I waited for Lauren to pour her coffee. For 28 years, I had entered every difficult conversation hoping to protect our marriage. This time, I was entering it to protect myself. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of calm that makes bad news feel even crueler. Sunlight came through the kitchen windows and settled across the table. Lauren wore the pale yellow robe I had given her 3 Christmases earlier. She sat with one leg folded beneath her, drinking coffee from her favorite mug while scrolling through her phone. It was an ordinary domestic scene. For most of my life, it would have filled me with quiet happiness. Now it looked like a performance I could no longer pretend to believe. I placed the folder on the table between us. "We need to talk." Lauren looked up. Her attention moved from my face to the folder. The change in her expression was immediate. Not fear. Recognition. Her coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. For one brief moment, something almost like relief crossed her face. The relief of someone who had spent years protecting a secret and had finally reached the moment when hiding was no longer necessary. "What is this about?" she asked. Her voice lacked the confusion an innocent person would have shown. She already knew. "I went to Harborview yesterday." The kitchen became completely still. I sat across from her. Apartment 214. Lauren slowly placed the coffee mug on the table. I found the key in the junk drawer. Her shoulders straightened. Her breathing became controlled. I watched the loving wife disappear from her face. The woman who apologized for late meetings. The woman who kissed my cheek before leaving for work. The woman who texted that she loved me while sitting beside another man. All of her vanished. The person who remained looked calm, intelligent, and unfamiliar. "I see," she said. That was all. No denial. No shock. No attempt to ask what I meant. Just a quiet acknowledgement that the secret had been discovered. "How much do you know?" The question struck harder than any confession could have. She did not ask whether I had misunderstood. She asked how much evidence I possessed. Everything. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. The apartment. Frank. The photographs. The business plan. The legal consultation. The divorce strategy. The emails. Lauren nodded slowly. Her fingers tapped against the table in a measured rhythm. I had seen that motion before. She used it during difficult negotiations while calculating her next move. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Since Thursday." "What happened Thursday?" "I visited your office." Her eyes sharpened. "I brought you lunch. The security guard told me he saw your husband every day." I leaned forward. Then he pointed at Frank. Something faint moved across Lauren's face. Amusement. "William has always been too talkative." That was her response. Not shame. Not concern that I had been publicly humiliated. Annoyance that an employee had exposed her. "He believed Frank was your husband." People make assumptions. For good reason, apparently. Lauren reached for her coffee. The movement was unhurried. "I suppose this changes the timeline." I stared at her. "The timeline?" "Yes." She took a sip. "I plan to speak with you next month." "Speak with me?" My voice rose despite my effort to control it. "You have been living with another man. You created an apartment with him. You planned a divorce behind my back, and your concern is that the timeline has changed?" Lauren sighed. The sound carried irritation rather than guilt. "Gerald, please do not turn this into a theatrical confrontation." "A theatrical confrontation?" "We are both adults. We can discuss this without shouting. We have been married for 28 years. Yes. You have been living a second life for at least 2 of them. Yes. You lied to me every day. I protected you from a reality you were not prepared to face." The sentence was so perfectly constructed that I almost admired it. She had transformed deception into kindness. Betrayal into protection. Cowardice into emotional intelligence. What reality? Lauren placed both hands around the mug. "Our marriage has been over for years." I waited. Perhaps she expected me to agree. Perhaps she had repeated the sentence often enough to friends, attorneys, and Frank that she believed it had become fact. "We both know that," she added. "No." My answer came quietly. "You know that. You decided it. I thought we were married." Lauren gave a short laugh. It contained no warmth. "Married?" "Yes." "When was the last time we had a meaningful conversation?" "We talked every day." We discussed groceries, bills, television, and whether the yard needed work. That is part of a life. It is maintenance, Gerald. Not living. She stood and carried her mug to the counter. When did you last show real interest in my career? I have supported your career for our entire marriage. You tolerated it. I rearranged my work so I could be home when you traveled. You made yourself comfortable. I contributed most of my income to our household so you could invest and build savings. You lacked the courage to build anything larger yourself. The words came quickly. Prepared. She had said them before. Perhaps to Frank. Perhaps to her lawyer. Perhaps to every friend she had been slowly recruiting to her side. You have spent years inside your little accounting practice, she continued. You are satisfied with the same clients, the same office, the same routine. There is nothing shameful about being satisfied. That is exactly the problem. She turned toward me. I wanted more. You could have told me. I tried. When? Every time I talked about moving to a better neighborhood. We own this house. That is not an answer. Every time I mentioned international travel, you worried about cost. I suggested we plan for it. You always wanted to plan. Frank wants to act. There it was. The comparison she had been making silently for years. Every difference between us had become evidence in his favor. You replaced me because he is more ambitious. I did not set out to replace you. That is exactly what you did. I met someone who understood the person I had become. And instead of talking to the man you married, you built another home with him. Lauren's expression hardened. You are oversimplifying this. No. I am finally describing it accurately. She crossed her arms. Frank joined Meridian 3 years ago. We worked closely. He understood the company, the market, and what I was trying to build. When did the affair begin? She considered the question as though reviewing an old transaction. About 2 years ago. Where? We closed a major contract. The team went out to celebrate. Frank and I stayed after everyone else left. And then? We talked. Her voice softened for the first time. Not because of me. Because she was remembering him. We talked until almost 3 in the morning about the company, travel, expansion, and the kind of life we wanted. You came home after that. Yes. You told me a client dinner ran late. It did. That is not what happened. It was the beginning of something I had been missing. She returned to the table and sat across from me. Frank listens when I talk about expanding internationally. He becomes excited by the same possibilities. He wants to build something. And I do not? You want to preserve. I wanted to preserve our marriage. You wanted to preserve everything exactly as it was. I studied her. The woman in front of me had taken every quiet value of our life and converted it into an accusation. Stability became stagnation. Loyalty became fear. Contentment became weakness. You say I never grew, I said. But what you call growth required lying to me every day. Lauren's jaw tightened. I did what I had to do. No. You did what was convenient. I did not want to hurt you. You just wanted everything else badly enough that hurting me stopped mattering. She looked away. For a moment, I saw discomfort. Not remorse. Only irritation at hearing this situation described in language she could not easily control. What happens now? I asked. Lauren relaxed slightly. The conversation had entered practical territory. Practical matters were where she felt strongest. We handle this like adults. What does that mean? I was planning to file next month. Why next month? The quarterly reporting period would be complete. It would minimize disruption at Meridian. Of course. She ignored the bitterness in my voice. Frank and I intended to marry before Christmas. The sentence landed between us. You already planned the wedding? A small ceremony. Before you even told me you wanted a divorce. We wanted to avoid a long transition. You have been transitioning for 2 years. I was simply the last person informed. She looked mildly uncomfortable. We hoped the process could remain civil. I pulled the legal consultation summary from the folder. Civil? I placed it in front of her. You plan to describe me as emotionally unavailable. Those were the attorney's words. You documented my evenings at home as social isolation. You rarely wanted to attend events. You described my practice as evidence that I lacked ambition. It is a small firm. It supported our household. Lauren's eyes moved across the document. You were not supposed to see this. That seems to be a common theme in our marriage. The attorney recommended preparation. The attorney recommended a story. You supplied the lies. They were not lies. You told your sister I was having a midlife crisis. Her expression shifted. You read my emails. Yes. That was a serious violation of my privacy. I stared at her. You maintained a second apartment with another man. That does not give you the right. Stop. My voice cut through the kitchen. Lauren fell silent. For 2 days, you stood inside this house and lied to my face while I knew the truth. I leaned toward her. I will not sit here and allow you to make my reading those emails the moral center of this conversation. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she leaned back. What do you want? The truth. You have it. No. I have evidence. I want to hear you say it. Her eyes narrowed. Say what? That you chose him. I chose a life that suited me. Say that you were willing to destroy me to obtain it. I never intended to destroy you. You planned to damage my reputation, take control of our assets, and present me as the reason the marriage failed. That was legal strategy. That was destruction. Lauren looked toward the window. The garden outside was bright beneath the morning sun. The same garden we had planted together. Do you love him? I asked. Her face softened. The answer arrived before she spoke. Yes. The word hurt less than I expected. Perhaps because I had already seen their home. I love him in a way I never loved you. That hurt more. What does that mean? He challenges me. So did I. Not in the way I needed. He makes me feel alive. And I made you feel what? Lauren studied me. Safe. The word was not an insult. Yet she delivered it as though it explained everything. Comfortable. Protected. Unchallenged. For 28 years, I thought safety was part of love. For a long time, I thought so, too. And now? Now I want more than safety. I looked at the folder between us. The photographs. The secret apartment. The legal strategy. 28 years reduced to evidence. When do you want me to leave? Lauren seemed surprised. You do not have to leave immediately. How generous. We can work through the attorneys. You expected to keep the house. It makes sense. My office is closer, and my income supports the mortgage and maintenance. We paid off the mortgage 8 years ago. Her face tightened. You know what I mean. Yes. I stood. I will speak with a lawyer Monday. Gerald. I stopped at the kitchen doorway. When I turned, Lauren looked almost like the woman I once knew. Almost. I really am sorry this happened the way it did. You are sorry I found out before you were ready. That is not fair. No. I looked at her. None of this was fair. She pressed her lips together. I never wanted to hurt you. No. You wanted to replace me. My voice became quieter. The pain was simply collateral damage. I walked upstairs. Before I reached the bedroom, I heard Lauren making a call. Her voice became animated. Urgent. Alive. The way she had described feeling with Frank. She was telling him the secret had been exposed. The inconvenient husband finally knew. Their timeline could move forward. I sat on the edge of our bed. Around me were the remains of a life I believed had been real. Her books on the nightstand. Our photograph from Santa Fe. The quilt we bought during our 20th anniversary trip. Tomorrow, I would begin separating 28 years into categories. Mine. Hers. Shared. Disputed. But that night, I grieved for something more complicated than a marriage. I grieved for the man I had been when I still believed in it. Monday morning, I sat across from David Morrison. His law office occupied the 12th floor of a downtown building overlooking the river. 5 years earlier, David's firm had updated our wills. Lauren later returned to the same firm to plan how to divorce me. Now I was asking the senior partner to protect me from that plan. The irony was difficult to ignore. David was in his early 60s. He wore dark-framed glasses and spoke with the calm precision of someone who had spent 30 years watching people turn private disappointment into public warfare. He reviewed the documents silently. The photographs. The apartment. The emails. The consultation summary. He read the financial notes twice. At last, he placed his glasses on the desk. "Gerald, this is one of the most calculated divorce preparations I have seen." "That is not reassuring." "It is not intended to be." He tapped the consultation summary. "Your wife has been building a narrative for a long time. Can she use it?" "She can try." "And will people believe her?" "Some already do." He leaned back. "The important difference is that you discovered the plan before she filed." "How does that help?" "Her strategy required you to be surprised, emotional, and unprepared." He pointed to the folder. "You are no longer any of those things." "I feel emotional." "That is normal. You are still prepared." David explained the law. Texas used community property principles. A judge would begin with the assumption that marital assets should be divided fairly, though not necessarily equally. Adultery could influence that division. So could fraud, misuse of shared funds, and deliberate attempts to hide property. "Her relationship with Frank matters," David said. "But the larger issue is what she used to support it." "I have been reviewing the accounts." "I assumed you would." I opened another folder. Spreadsheets covered the table. Bank statements. Credit card records. Transfers. Expense summaries. This was the part of the betrayal I understood best. Numbers did not become offended. They did not change their story when confronted. They simply waited for someone patient enough to organize them. "Lauren earns approximately $200,000 a year," I said. David nodded. "My practice generates around $120,000. I contribute roughly $80,000 annually to her household and joint investments." Lauren told her attorney you lacked ambition and depended on her income. She lied. I turned the spreadsheet toward him. "Our household spending has exceeded her take-home income by approximately $60,000 a year for the past 3 years. David leaned closer. "How was the difference covered?" "My contributions and withdrawals from joint savings." "Did you authorize the withdrawals?" "I believe they were for household expenses." "They were not?" I displayed the transactions. "Harbor View rent, furniture, restaurant bills, trips, gifts, utilities, dry cleaning." I pointed to a series of payments. "She used marital assets to finance the apartment." David's expression hardened. "How much?" "Approximately $187,000 over 2 years." He sat back. "That is significant. I thought I was contributing to our future." "You were contributing to hers." The truth of it pressed against my chest. Lauren had not only accepted my trust. She had billed me for the privilege of being deceived. David made several notes. "This is marital waste." "What does that mean?" "It means she used community property for a purpose that benefited her and damaged the marital estate." "Can we recover it?" "We can request that the amount be charged against her share of the settlement." I nodded. "There is more." David looked up. "Of course there is." I opened the business folder. The draft Meridian restructuring plan. Corporate filings. Board notices. Public reports. Lauren and Frank intended to reorganize the executive structure. Frank would become chief executive officer. Lauren would move into a newly created president role with expanded strategic control. The problem was not their ambition. The problem was that the board had never approved the arrangement. Frank was hired as vice president of business development, I explained. Over 3 years, Lauren transferred operational responsibilities to him without formally modifying his role. Is that illegal? Not necessarily. Then what is the issue? The board was never told that she had a personal relationship with the executive receiving that authority. David's eyes sharpened. Conflict of interest. Yes. She was grooming her romantic partner to assume control. Yes. And planning to present the change as a completed operational reality. That is what the documents suggest. David, read the proposed organizational chart. This is larger than divorce. I know. Are you prepared for what happens if the board discovers this? The question forced me to stop. For 28 years, I had protected Lauren. When she missed family events, I explained. When her decisions created problems, I helped smooth them. When she pushed ethical boundaries at work, I convinced myself that strong executives sometimes needed flexibility. I had spent decades standing between her choices and their consequences. That habit did not disappear simply because she betrayed me. Part of me still wanted to protect her career. Then I remembered the folder labeled future plans. The divorce strategy. The email to her sister. The money taken from our savings. She had counted on that protective instinct. It formed part of her plan. "Yes," I said. "I am prepared." David nodded. "Then we file first." "Today?" "Today. We request temporary orders preventing either party from moving major assets. We document the apartment, the spending, and the affair. Then we decide how to approach Meridian. I already know how." Richard Hayes answered his phone that afternoon. He had chaired Meridian's board for 7 years. Lauren spoke about him with a mixture of respect and irritation. Richard asked questions. He expected explanations. Executives who preferred freedom rarely appreciated directors who remembered their legal responsibilities. "Gerald," he said warmly. "What can I do for you?" "Richard, I need to bring a corporate governance concern to your attention." His tone changed. "What kind of concern?" I kept the personal details out of the opening explanation. I described the unauthorized transfer of responsibilities to Frank. The unapproved executive restructuring plan. The discrepancy between actual operations and reports provided to the board. Richard listened without interrupting. His questions became increasingly precise. "Have you seen internal documents?" "I have seen a draft plan written by Lauren and Frank." "Where did you obtain it?" "From an apartment they maintain together." The silence lasted several seconds. "Together?" "Yes." "Are you telling me Lauren and Frank are romantically involved?" "Yes." "Does the board know?" "No." "Are you certain?" "I have photographs, correspondence, financial records, and evidence of a shared residence." Richard exhaled. "Jesus." I heard a door close on his end of the line. "When did this begin?" "Approximately 2 years ago." "And during that time, she transferred increasing authority to him?" "Yes." "Without disclosure?" "Yes." "Send me what you have." "I will send the corporate materials. The personal evidence will go through my attorney unless the board requires it." "That is appropriate." "Richard, I am not asking you to punish her because she was unfaithful." "I understand. I am asking the board to determine whether undisclosed personal interests affected company decisions." "That is exactly what we will determine." After the call, I sat alone in my office. I expected satisfaction. Instead, I felt sadness. I had just placed a match beside the professional life Lauren valued more than anything. But I had not created the fuel. She had spent years arranging it. All I did was stop pretending not to smell smoke. Lauren came home after 8 that evening. The front door struck the wall harder than usual. She entered the kitchen carrying her briefcase. Her face was tight. Her composure had cracked around the edges. "We need to talk." I looked up from the table. "About what?" "Do not do that." "Do what?" "Pretend you do not know." She dropped the briefcase onto a chair. "Richard Hayes called me." I expected he would. "The board is opening a governance review." "I know. They are bringing in outside counsel." "That seems appropriate." Her eyes narrowed. "My own husband is trying to destroy my career." I shared factual information. "You knew exactly what would happen?" "Yes." The answer stopped her. She had expected denial. Perhaps an apology. Perhaps the old Gerald who would become frightened by her anger and begin explaining himself. That man was gone. "This is different," she said. "How?" "This affects my professional reputation." "Your affair with Frank also affects your professional reputation." "My private life is none of the board's business." "It became their business when you gave him authority without disclosing the relationship." "There is nothing improper about assigning responsibilities to a capable executive. There is something improper about secretly positioning your romantic partner to become chief executive officer. That plan was preliminary. Then the review will confirm that." Lauren stared at me. I watched her reassess the man sitting across from her. For 28 years, I had been dependable, predictable, patient. She had mistaken those qualities for manageability. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want you to stop treating me as though I am stupid." "I have never thought you were stupid. You planned an entire second life under the assumption that I would never notice. That was not. You created a legal strategy based on the belief that I would be too shocked to defend myself." She did not answer. "You used our money to support an apartment with another man." Her expression changed. "You reviewed the accounts." "I am an accountant." "How much do you think you found?" $187,000 in identifiable expenses. The color left her face. "And that number will probably increase once David obtains complete records." "You hired David Morrison?" "Yes. I consulted with his firm." "I know. That may create a conflict." He addressed it. "The attorney you consulted works in a separate division, and the firm has already established the necessary ethical screen." Lauren looked genuinely unsettled. I had reached the part of the situation she understood best. Preparation. Documentation. Leverage. What will it take to make the board review disappear? It will not disappear. You can tell Richard you misunderstood. I did not misunderstand. You can tell him this is a marital dispute. It is also a governance issue. Lauren stepped closer. You are destroying everything I worked for. No. I held her gaze. You built your career on choices. Some were good. Some were not. I am simply refusing to protect the bad ones. Her face tightened. You have become vindictive. Accountability feels like revenge to people who expected protection. The sentence landed. For once, Lauren had no response. She picked up her briefcase and walked upstairs. Minutes later, I heard her making calls behind the bedroom door. Her voice was controlled but urgent. Attorneys. Board members. Frank. For the first time in years, she was facing a problem I would not solve for her. That night, something fundamental changed. For 28 years, I had adjusted. I moved around her schedule. Accepted her absences. Explained her moods. Absorbed the costs of her ambition. Now she had to adjust to consequences she could not control. It was not revenge. It was the end of enabling. The divorce petition was filed the following morning. David moved quickly. He requested temporary orders preventing either of us from transferring major assets. He documented Lauren's spending on the apartment. He submitted evidence showing that I contributed consistently to the marital estate. He challenged the claim that I depended financially on Lauren. More importantly, he filed before her attorney could present the story she had spent 2 years constructing. Lauren's response arrived 1 week later. She claimed the marriage had become emotionally empty. She described us as living separate lives. She insisted the Harbor View apartment was primarily for business convenience. The photographs made that argument difficult. So did the shared bedroom. The vacation records. The messages discussing their future marriage. Her attorney abandoned the apartment explanation quickly. The next argument was that our marriage had already ended emotionally before the affair began. David responded with 28 years of records showing shared accounts, vacations, family correspondence, medical decisions, anniversary plans, and Lauren's affectionate messages to me throughout the period she claimed we were emotionally separated. The messages were particularly useful. Love you. Miss you. Thank you for always supporting me. Could not do this without you. Words she sent repeatedly while preparing to argue that our relationship no longer existed. Truth has a way of making old lies contradict one another. The Meridian investigation moved even faster. Outside counsel interviewed board members, executives, assistants, and finance staff. They reviewed Frank's changing responsibilities. His access to confidential information. The contracts he approved. The compensation adjustments Lauren supported. The board discovered that Frank had received bonuses exceeding the authorized range for his position. Lauren had justified them as retention payments. No one knew she was retaining more than an executive. The review also found that Lauren had excluded certain directors from planning discussions while presenting the proposed restructuring to managers as though board approval were inevitable. She had attempted to create a completed reality and force the board to accept it later. That may have worked if the relationship had remained hidden. Once the personal conflict became known, every decision received new scrutiny. Frank was placed on administrative leave. Lauren retained her title temporarily, but the board restricted her authority. All major decisions required approval from Richard Hayes and an independent committee. For a woman who built her identity around control, the restriction was more painful than a reduction in salary. She blamed me. Every conversation between us became shorter. We remained in the same house under temporary orders, but occupied different bedrooms. Lauren spent most nights at Harborview until the board advised her that continued residence with Frank during the investigation would worsen the conflict. She moved back into our guest room. The arrangement was absurd. The wife who had built another home with her lover now returned to protect her professional image. I stopped cooking for her. Stopped asking when she would return. Stopped rearranging my schedule around hers. Small acts. But each one returned something to me. Time. Energy. Dignity. I began realizing how much of my life had been devoted to preventing Lauren from feeling inconvenienced. Without that responsibility, the house felt lighter. Even while the divorce was unfolding. The mediation took place 4 months after I discovered the apartment. Lauren entered the conference room with 2 attorneys. She wore a charcoal suit and carried herself with the controlled confidence she used during board presentations. But she looked older. The stress showed around her eyes. Frank had been terminated from Meridian 3 weeks earlier. The board concluded that his undisclosed relationship with Lauren created an unacceptable conflict of interest. They found no evidence of criminal conduct. But they documented repeated failures of disclosure, unauthorized changes in responsibility, and compensation decisions that lacked independent review. Lauren kept her position. Barely. She signed a corrective agreement. Her executive authority was reduced. A new chief operating officer was appointed to oversee daily operations. Major personnel and financial decisions required committee approval. She remained chief executive officer in title. In practice, she was no longer free to run Meridian according to her personal judgment. Frank moved out of Harborview. He accepted a lower-paying position in Denver. The future they had planned began collapsing before our divorce was complete. At mediation, Lauren's opening proposal gave her the house, most of the savings, and full ownership of the investment account. She offered me a cash payment that would have represented less than 1/3 of the marital estate. David read the proposal. Then he pushed it back across the table. No. Lauren's attorney attempted to justify the division using differences in income and future earning potential. David presented the financial records. My contributions. The mortgage payments. The money diverted to Harborview. The gifts and travel. The undisclosed withdrawals. The mediator reviewed the numbers. Then she asked Lauren a simple question. Did your husband know marital funds were being used to maintain this apartment? Lauren answered carefully. He knew I had substantial professional expenses. That is not what I asked. No. The single word changed the room. By late afternoon, her proposal had changed. I kept the house. Lauren kept her retirement accounts. Our joint savings were divided equally after deducting the funds she used to support Harborview. I retained full ownership of my accounting practice. She retained her Meridian stock options, subject to the value included in the property division. Neither side would pay long-term spousal support. It was not victory. It was fairness. A word Lauren had not intended to include in her original plan. The divorce became final 3 weeks later. 28 years of marriage ended with signatures. A clerk stamped the decree. David shook my hand. Lauren left through a different exit. There was no dramatic final confrontation. No speech. No last embrace. Only the quiet conclusion of something that had been dying long before I knew it was ill. 6 months after the confrontation, I stood in the kitchen of my new apartment making coffee for one. I had kept the house in the settlement. Then I sold it. Some people were surprised. The property was valuable. I had fought to retain it. But fighting for the house had never been about wanting to live there forever. It was about refusing to let Lauren seize it through deception. Once it was legally mine, I was free to decide whether it still belonged in my life. It did not. Every room contained a version of the marriage I could no longer trust. Selling it felt less like losing a home and more like releasing a witness. My apartment was smaller. 2 bedrooms. A narrow kitchen. A balcony overlooking a park. Morning sunlight entered through windows I had chosen. The furniture reflected my taste. The silence belonged entirely to me. There were no unexplained late nights. No hidden schedules. No phones turned face down. No feeling that my contentment was disappointing someone. For the first time in years, quiet did not feel like evidence of failure. It felt peaceful. News about Lauren reached me through mutual friends and professional contacts. The Harborview apartment had been surrendered. Frank's move to Denver became permanent. He accepted a position at a smaller technology firm for significantly less money. Lauren moved into a modest apartment closer to Meridian. Her income remained high, but her authority remained restricted. Every major decision was reviewed. Every potential conflict required written disclosure. The woman who had built her identity around independence now worked beneath tighter oversight than she had experienced in decades. I did not celebrate. Watching someone face consequences is different from enjoying their pain. I had loved Lauren for most of my adult life. Part of me would always remember the woman she had been before ambition became entitlement. But I no longer felt responsible for protecting her from the life she created. Several mutual friends contacted me after the divorce. Some apologized. Lauren had told them we drifted apart gradually. She described the separation as mutual. She said I had withdrawn and refused to grow. Most knew nothing about Frank. Nothing about the apartment. Nothing about the legal strategy. Sarah Martinez, one of Lauren's former colleagues, approached me in a grocery store. "I had no idea," she said. "She made it sound as though you both agreed the marriage was over." "We did not." "I'm sorry I believed her." "You believed someone you trusted." The sentence surprised me. It was the same mistake I had made. I could hardly condemn another person for it. Those conversations were validating. For months, I questioned whether Lauren had been right about me. Perhaps I had become dull. Perhaps my simple routines were evidence of some emotional failure. Perhaps another man could provide something essential that I had never understood. Then I realized how many people Lauren had manipulated. Colleagues. Friends. Family. Board members. The security staff at her own company. The deception was not proof that I was inadequate. It was proof that she had become skilled at presenting whatever version of reality served her purpose. The greatest change was not in Lauren's life. It was in my relationship with myself. I began seeing how much energy I had spent trying to anticipate her disappointment. I adjusted meals around her schedule. Canceled plans when she worked late. Avoided discussing needs that might add pressure. Accepted loneliness as the price of supporting an ambitious partner. I believed love meant making another person's life easier. I never asked whether they were making mine harder. Living alone revealed the imbalance. I could read in the evening without feeling guilty for enjoying it. I could prepare a simple meal without wondering whether Lauren found it uninspired. I could spend Saturday morning walking through the park instead of attending a corporate event where everyone discussed investments and expansion. My life became smaller in certain ways. It also became honest. I did not expect to date again. At 56, after 28 years of marriage, the idea seemed exhausting. Then I met Margaret Ellis. She was a widow from my church. Her husband had died 4 years earlier. Margaret taught English literature at a community college before retiring. She loved used bookstores, quiet restaurants, and long conversations that did not require either person to impress the other. Our first dinner lasted 3 hours. We talked about books, aging parents, grief, and the strange difficulty of learning how to live alone after decades of partnership. When I apologized for choosing a modest restaurant, she looked confused. "The food is good, and we can hear each other," she said. "Why would I want anything else?" The answer affected me more than she understood. Margaret did not treat simplicity as a failure of imagination. She did not require every evening to become an experience. She found value in attention, presence, honest conversation. The qualities Lauren described as limitations were the qualities Margaret appreciated. I began to understand an important truth. Sometimes the difference is not in what you offer. It is in who receives it. Loyalty can feel restrictive to someone who wants freedom without accountability. To someone capable of loyalty, it feels safe. Contentment can look like stagnation to someone addicted to external validation. To someone at peace with themselves, it looks like gratitude. My value had not changed. I had simply spent too many years offering it to someone who no longer respected it. One evening in late spring, I sat on my balcony reading while the sun lowered behind the park. My phone rang. Lauren's name appeared on the screen. It was the first time she had called since the divorce became final. I considered letting it go to voicemail. We had no children. No shared business. No legal obligation requiring contact. Curiosity won. "Hello, Lauren." "Gerald." Her voice sounded tired. "Older. I hope I'm not disturbing you. What can I do for you?" There was a long pause. I wanted to apologize. I said nothing. For the way everything happened. That is a broad category. I know. She released a slow breath. I have had time to think about what I did. What did you decide? That you did not deserve it. No, I did not. I convinced myself the marriage was already over. You said that many times. I needed to believe it. Why? Because if it was already over, then I was not betraying you. I was simply moving toward the truth. And now? Now I understand that I ended it. Her voice became quieter. I ended it when I decided you were not enough instead of speaking honestly about what I needed. The apology sounded real. Incomplete, but real. What prompted this realization? Lauren gave a short laugh without humor. Losing everything I thought I wanted. I waited. Frank and I lasted 6 weeks after he moved to Denver. I looked across the park. A man walked a dog along the path. Children were playing near the fountain. What happened? The relationship did not survive ordinary life. The statement was almost painfully appropriate. What does that mean? The secrecy made everything intense. Planning the future made us feel powerful. We believed we were escaping something and building something larger. And when there was nothing left to hide, we discovered we did not actually enjoy living together. I'm sorry. Are you? She sounded genuinely curious. I considered my answer. Yes. Why? Because you threw away 28 years for something that was not real. The line became quiet. I am sorry that you hurt me, yourself, and everyone around you while pursuing something that existed mainly because it was forbidden. Lauren did not respond immediately. Do you ever wonder what might have happened if I had talked to you? Sometimes. If I had told you I was restless? That was never the unforgivable part. What was? You chose deception instead of conversation. I placed my book on the table. You did not say you needed more. You decided I was incapable of giving it. You are right. You replaced me before giving me a chance to understand the problem. I know. Do you? The question came more sharply than I intended. Because this apology still sounds focused on what did not work out for you. Lauren remained silent. You are sorry Frank left? Yes. You are sorry Meridian restricted your authority? Yes. You are sorry the life you planned collapsed? Yes. But are you sorry that for 2 years, you accepted love and support from someone you were systematically preparing to destroy? The silence lasted so long that I thought the call had disconnected. Then Lauren spoke. You are right. Her voice was almost a whisper. Even now, I am making it about me. Yes. I do not know how to fix that. That is no longer my responsibility. Another silence. I hope you are happy, Gerald. I am. Have you met someone? Yes. What is she like? Honest. The word came first. Then the others followed. Kind. Thoughtful. Comfortable with herself. She sounds good for you. She is. I hope she appreciates what I failed to. She does. Lauren breathed in slowly. Good. The word contained sadness. Perhaps regret. Perhaps the first honest understanding that some doors do not reopen simply because the person who closed them becomes lonely. You deserve that, she said. So do you. She seemed surprised. I do? You deserve the opportunity to become someone capable of receiving honest love without exploiting it. The sentence was not forgiveness. It was the most truthful thing I could offer. We ended the call. I remained on the balcony while the sun disappeared. The sky turned orange, then violet, then gray. A year earlier, I had lived inside a lie without knowing it. I believed I was married to someone who loved me. In reality, she was planning my replacement while using my loyalty to make the transition easier. Now I was alone in a smaller apartment. But I was not lonely. I was beginning again. Not from nothing. From experience. From clarity. From the understanding that contentment was not a flaw. That loyalty was not weakness. That quiet people are not empty simply because they do not announce every ambition. Lauren had mistaken my satisfaction with an honest life for a lack of imagination. Margaret saw it differently. She understood that peace is not what remains when passion disappears. Peace can be something two honest people build deliberately. Something valuable. Something alive. As I prepared for bed that night, I thought about the man I had been before walking into Meridian's lobby. He trusted easily. He avoided conflict. He believed love meant endless accommodation. Part of me felt embarrassed by him. Then I understood that he had done nothing shameful. Trusting your spouse is not foolish. Loving someone faithfully is not weakness. The shame belongs to the person who exploits that trust. Not to the person who offered it honestly. I did not need to become suspicious of everyone. I did not need to punish Margaret for Lauren's deception. I needed only to become more protective of my own dignity. Love should involve patience. It should involve sacrifice. But it should not require one person to disappear so the other can feel important. For years, I had been trying to become enough for someone who had already decided I was not. I accepted love as though it were a temporary reward. Something that might be withdrawn if I failed to meet standards that changed without explanation. Now I understood the difference between love and approval. Approval depends on performance. Love makes room for truth. At 56, I learned that sometimes the most important loss is the one that frees you from something slowly destroying you. Freedom does not always arrive looking like freedom. Sometimes it arrives as humiliation in a corporate lobby. A strange key in a kitchen drawer. A folder labeled future plans. A divorce petition. Sometimes freedom first feels like the end of your life. Then, little by little, it becomes the beginning of one you can finally recognize as your own. Lauren had been right about one thing. We both deserve to be with someone who understood us. But understanding does not mean sharing every ambition. It means seeing another person clearly and refusing to use what you see against them. Lauren understood my loyalty. She used it to keep me quiet. She understood my patience. She used it to buy time. She understood my trust. She used it to build another life without interruption. Margaret understood those same qualities and treated them as gifts. The difference was not in me. The difference was character. As I turned off the lights in my small apartment, I looked around the room. Nothing was hidden. Nothing required explanation. The quiet was honest. For the first time in years, I was exactly where I belonged. If you have ever been made to believe that your loyalty is weakness, remember this. Kindness does not require blindness. Patience does not require surrender. And loving someone does not mean protecting them from every consequence of the choices they make. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stop arguing with the truth. Stop covering the evidence. Stop making excuses. And step away from the person who has mistaken your love for permission. Losing Lauren broke the life I believed I had. But it also returned me to myself. And in the end, that was worth more than any marriage built on a lie.